Whenever people are discussing the social ills that have been brought by the new information age and social media, and they usually mention things like anonymity and how easy it is to respond quickly to somebody, without knowing who they are or really thinking of them as a person. And I agree with all of these diagnoses for why social media might be hurting our ability to, come to fair, reasoned and empathetic decisions and moral judgments. But I think one of the things that people often miss out when talking about social media is probably my least favourite thing about it, which is the immediate sharing of other people's opinions and posting them to your own page and sort of broadcasting them as if you'd said them yourself. But I do often find myself wishing that I could talk to someone directly rather than hearing them just repeat the words of someone else or just sharing someone else's words. I'd rather be, if that's what they really believe, then I'd rather talk to them about it directly. And that way it feels like a genuine attempt at communication, whereas the thoughtless, mindless sharing of other people's opinions, I think in almost every instance I'd much rather read someone even if they're not as articulate as the person they're retweeting, I'd rather just see somebody stating that opinion in their own words, saying what they believe, and then I feel like there's a human being on the other side who I can engage with. Anyway, I started to think about this more just recently when I saw Douglas Murray on the Joe Rogan podcast.
Václav Havel, great late Czech leader, says this when he was one of the great Czech dissidents and playwrights of the period in the 60s and 70s. He wrote a piece once, which is really worth reading again today, where he cites the example of a greengrocer in Prague who has to put up in his window, like everyone else, the notice that says, "Workers of the world unite." And it's sent by party headquarters to all greengrocers, and you all have to hang it. And Václav Havel says a number of things happen from this. The first thing is that, of course, that the greengrocer is showing to everyone that he is a party loyalist and he wouldn't be able to operate as a business if he didn't do this thing. But it also hangs there every day as a sign of his subjugation. It's a little thing, but it hangs there as a sign of his subjugation. And it reminds him that he's not the man he could be. Now, one of the results of that is that such a person ends up hating the people who make him hang the sign, hates him because they have demoralized him. But Havel's point, among others, is you think you're doing a little thing, but you're not. You are diminishing your soul by doing this because you know that you could be something more than the person who just has to hang whatever party headquarters tells you to hang this week.
And so everybody is being asked to broadcast this statement, "Workers of the world unite," and to signpost, almost literally, their agreement with this statement and their endorsement of it. And what I love especially about this story is that the slogan of "Workers of the World Unite" is so vague and just so difficult to pin down in its precise meaning. I think it is worth pointing out the danger in mindlessly agreeing with and broadcasting statements that have such a broad, vague meaning, such as that. Especially when you're being asked to do it not of your own free will, but as a quid pro quo or as a demand, especially. When you look at a slogan like this, there's almost nothing that anybody could possibly object to. And yet once you commit to a statement like that, the people who are in charge of the propaganda or in charge of the language being used can then switch the meaning on you. After you've already agreed to the statement, they will tell you after the fact what the statement really means and what you're agreeing to all along. And that is what really worries me when I see people posting these platitudes on their social media, is that I don't think they really know what they're saying. Or maybe they do, but they may be surprised later on to find that they agreed to something they didn't realize they were agreeing to. And the real problem is that people are so afraid of being a hypocrite, of being inconsistent, that they will often let this process happen naturally without any resistance. So, for example, the Green Grocer who's been asked to put the Workers of the World Unite sign in his window, when he's told a year later, after having that sign in his window for a year, that Workers of the World Unite really means smash the institutions. What it really means is down with capitalism and you need to burn down the bank on the street corner, then he's much more likely to agree to act on those orders than he would have been if he'd never agreed to the Works of the World Unite poster in the first place. People want to appear consistent with previous statements that they've made that they know other people have seen them make. When you know that you're on record, either officially or unofficially, as saying something or as pronouncing such and such an act to be either moral or immoral, you will try to make your future behaviour match with that statement so that you won't appear to be a hypocrite. And there was a study that I read about recently demonstrated this by making people put in a little sign in their windows. I think it was for a speed limit in their area to encourage people to drive at the speed limit or to lower the speed limit. I really tried to look up what this study was and I couldn't find it, and it's very annoying. So if you know where I might have read that in a book or a podcast or something, please let me know. But I couldn't find it when researching this video, so you'll just have to take my word for it, or maybe even don't. But there are actually two ways out of this dangerous cycle of behaviour, and that is either to refuse to parrot anybody else's pointless platitudes, or the second option is to just accept that sometimes your behaviour may appear inconsistent, or maybe it even is inconsistent. And it's true that sometimes that can make you a hypocrite if you act in a way that is contrary to something you've said before, and yet that still might be a preferable alternative to acting immorally just to be consistent. And I think both of those suggestions are valuable at different points in our lives, but in this video I'd like to highlight the first one, which is just to use your own words wherever possible. And I know that's slightly ironic or maybe inconsistent, you could say, with the fact that I've used a clip of Douglas Murray in this video, but I've accompanied it with a sufficient amount of rambling so that I feel like I'm off the hook from my own rule. And since my second rule is to allow myself to be inconsistent when I think it's appropriate, I'm going to go along with that one and say that it's all right for me to use a clip of Douglas Murray because it helps me make my point in this video. And similarly, I see people saying things like, well, why can't you just say Black Lives Matter? Like, why won't you just say it? Like, if you think that black people's lives matter, then you should be able to say it. Just say it. Or, why don't you just kneel in the street? Like, why don't you just raise your fist? Why don't you just show a token of support for our organisation? Why can't you just put up a sign in your window? It really won't hurt you to do that. And it won't take any effort from you, and we're not asking for very much. And I think there is some legitimacy to that way of thinking, but I am just resistant to it, because I think that there is something almost sacred about somebody's own speech, their own opinions. I don't think it's anybody's business to tell you or I or anyone what to say, because what they're asking for is your compliance. And once they have your compliance or your tacit support or your token of support, they might ask for something the next day. And maybe they won't, and maybe that sounds paranoid, but they can. And that's the important thing, is that you've signed a little contract, and you can choose to ignore that contract later when they ask for something bigger that maybe you won't be allowed to. But in your mind, you'll remember that you signed the contract. you'll remember that token of support that you gave, and it's going to make you want to be consistent with that support. So if you believe that black people's lives matter, then you can say that, and I think you should say that if you want to, but use your words. Tell people what you really think in your own words. And then when someone tries to change the definition of those words and tell you that that is what the word always meant, when they try to say that the words you said didn't mean what you thought they meant, you can tell them that they were your words and that you did mean it that way. I think that's all I've got for you today. I hope you don't mind the change of format. I'm actually coming to you from my car right now, and I heard that there's actually superior audio inside vehicles, so I hope this ends up sounding better, or sounding alright without the PC fan humming in the background. I think there is something valuable about being able to see me when you hear me speaking. I like to be able to see people when they're talking when I watch videos, so I'm sorry I can't give you that today. I know there's going to be people joking about me going from a bedroom to under the stairs and now to my car. Don't worry, I'm not homeless. But but on a serious note, I have been monetizing videos recently because my income has been more limited since the COVID shutdowns. The company that I work for is not quite as productive as it once was, and so we're all participating in a salary sacrifice. I'm not going to be living on the street or anything. It's just that I could kind of use the extra money right now, and so I hope you don't mind watching adverts. I've tried not to put any adverts in the middle of videos because I find that quite irritating when it breaks up the flow. I'd rather you see my entire video, but I'm not asking for money. Please don't try to donate to the channel. I'm just explaining why it's like this. Please leave your comments as always. I'd love to read those. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you again very soon.